Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, CDs or fixed annuities or high-yield savings accounts. Which one makes sense? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon and welcome to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm your host, Bob Brooks. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, today we are not taking live questions, and if you do have a question for me, feel free to go to prudentmoney.com. You'll find the Ask Question part of the website. Send your question in, send a comment in, whatever's on your mind. We'd love to hear from you. You know, that's always a resource for you to take advantage of, all at prudentmoney.com. Question is, where to put safe money? Now, let's first start off with some definitions of what I mean by safe money. Safe money can take on two forms. The first form that it can take on is that of what we all know safe money to be, which is emergency fund money. It's money you can't afford to lose. It's money that you need in the event that you have an emergency or something that comes up that you don't have funds for in your checking account, but you do in your emergency account. And remember, your emergency account, a fully funded emergency account, keeps you from doing one thing, which is create debt, which is what we don't want to do, especially in this environment, especially going forward. It's all about a new day, which is getting out of debt. And I've got a great program that's going to be coming on tomorrow. I'll talk about here in a little bit. It's going to be talking all about debt and some of the things that are going on. So we'll talk about that towards the end. But where do you put safe money? So there is emergency fund purposes. Then there is investment purposes. Longer term safe money. Guarantees that you're not going to lose money. You can't afford to lose money. Your risk level dictates that you not lose money. So with the Federal Reserve Board, as we've been talking about, has gone through and raised interest rates. That, of course, is filtered down to savings accounts, to money market accounts, unfortunately to the credit industry. It's really affected the credit industry, but we're not focusing on that. We're focusing on where you can grow money. And investors consumers are just confused about this whole rising interest rate environment because they'll come out and the comments that I hear are, yeah, Bob, I checked on my savings account. It's still paying 0.01%. What's this higher paying account that you can put your emergency fund money into? Or they'll go and they'll say, yeah, well, mine is I have a money market through my bank, and it's paying 2.46%, but not even close to what you said that you can get in an account that is liquid. So I am here today to clear up. How about that? Clear up the confusion. Surely don't want to confuse you, even though it is Monday. So let's start with, now let me back up and say this. There's three different opportunities to grow safe money. And you need to make sure that you understand each one, and you need to make sure that you are utilizing and looking for the right one. Let's start with what is termed high yield savings account. Now, I have a bit of an issue with calling this account a high yield account because high yield in the bond world, which people will get that confused. They hear high yield in one aspect of investments, and they assume that it means the same in the other aspect of investments. High yield in the bond category indicates high risk. And so you get the ability to invest money, but the problem is that you're giving money. And remember, a bond is a loan of money to an institution or a company, municipality, and it says, I'm going to give you this $100,000, or I'm going to give you this $50,000 for these bonds, and I'm going to hold on. You're going to hold on to those bonds for a certain period of time. I'm going to pay you interest on those bonds. Then, at the time that the term is up, we want our principal back. So we've kept our principal, and we've made the money along the way. And as long as the company or the institution doesn't default, then they can give the money back. It's nothing more than loaning money. But this high yield savings account is different because you're not taking risk from the standpoint of investment risk. A high yield savings account is just exactly what the name of the account suggests, is that you're getting a higher interest rate on this particular savings account. Now, the oddest thing is a savings account that's high yield is not getting as much, in most cases, as a high yield money market account. Savings accounts you typically see at banks. Money market accounts you typically see at brokerage companies like a Fidelity or a Vanguard or a Charles Schwab. So there's a lot about what they're calling this that's confusing. So I get that. So just remember, a savings account, a money market account, they both do the exact same thing. They both are there for saving. They're both supposed to not lose money. No guarantees, but they're not supposed to lose money. And they do really roughly the same thing. The big difference, though, today is that savings accounts in banks are not paying as much on average as money market accounts. So there's the big difference. And you're getting FDIC insurance on the savings account at the bank, whereas you're getting another type of insurance on investment accounts, and I think it's up to $500,000 on a money market account in a brokerage account, a brokerage company. So you're looking for the exact same thing. You're just looking for which is paying the highest amount, because that is where the benefit is. And all these numbers can change. I'm just quoting what I've seen. And so not a recommendation to go invest, not a recommendation to do anything. I'm just using it as an example. I did see the last time I checked, probably one of the more popular money markets at a very large institution, mutual fund company, brokerage institution, is paying 4.75%. So not bad. 4.75%. Now that can fluctuate, that can go down, that can go up, but at 4.75%. And that is the kinds of rate you're wanting to get out there and shop the market. I'd be real careful about bankrate.com, just because they're going to show you really random places that are paying higher rates. And I don't know that I would walk away from a popular brand, solid, stable name when you're looking at any of these accounts. So once again, what a high yield savings account does, just think of it as emergency fund on steroids, finally getting paid good interest on emergency fund, which we haven't seen in a very, very long time. And then the brokerage account aspect of it is you may use it as an investment category because it's probably returning about the same as bonds are. Of course, we'll have to see how bonds do this year, but it is a if I can use the word safer, maybe not safer because safe has a lot of different meanings to it, but it is typically considered safe. We'll say that. Not that you can't lose money, because you can. This is Bob Brooks, and you got to love all of the disclaimers that I have to say because it's true. Don't want to leave the wrong impression. So if you got a question for me, please go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Send that question in, and I will get it taken care of. So the very first category is high yield savings account. I'd rather them call it something besides high yield because I don't want you to end up saying, well, what's wrong with a high yield bond account? Because I'll tell you, the problem with a high yield bond account is not that it's not paying a lot of interest, because they do pay a lot of interest typically. That's why they call them high yield. It's just investing money into debt that I would call high risk debt, and these high yield bonds can lose as much money as a stock can lose. That's what they don't tell you. As you're clipping those coupons and thinking about how great this is, I'm sure I haven't checked high yield bond funds here as of late, but I'm sure that in the year last year they didn't do so hot. So you got to remember there's a little bit of risk that goes along with that. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Listen, we are up against a break. 2 other types that you need to know about on the other side. Stick around. I'll be right back.
The Word for Today is excited to announce the new official online home for the ministry of Pastor Chuck Smith and Kay Smith, pastorchuck.org. At pastorchuck.org, you'll have instant access to thousands of hours of verse-by-verse teaching by Pastor Chuck Smith from Genesis through Revelation, and full access to special messages on subjects such as prophecy and much, much more. Also at pastorchuck.org, a full library of great teachings by Kay Smith, and a section where you can read some of Pastor Chuck's books online, all free of charge. So visit the new official online home of the Word for Today and the ministry of Pastor Chuck and Kay Smith, pastorchuck.org.
And if you're looking for the will of God for your life, here's where you start. Find the will of God for tomorrow. And your tomorrows will turn into more tomorrows until pretty soon the will of God will be a part of your everyday experience.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for a special message on finding peace in a world of chaos. Next time on Turning Point.
The gospel is a message of hope everyone needs to hear. And the gospel is a message of hope every believer needs to share. And we'll get some practical help this week on A New Beginning. Pastor Greg Laurie helps us use the rich truth from the book of Romans as we pass along the good news of God's love. Tune in this week for A New Beginning.
A New Beginning, weekday mornings at 7:30 here on KDKR.
Good afternoon. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. As I said at the beginning of the program, I'm not taking questions today, going over some information about the safe money category, what's there available for you, and to clear up some confusion. If you got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com. You'll have directions as to where to go to. You'll see it. It'll be obvious, and you can send a question in. We'll get you taken care of. Now, the first one we talked about, spent a little more time than I wanted to, but I thought it was important to talk about, is the high yield savings account, which is a savings account that's paying higher interest than your normal savings accounts have been paying. Savings accounts you'll see at banks, money market rates, that's where you're seeing most of these high yield savings type of accounts are in money markets, which is really nothing different, no different than a savings account for the most part. You're seeing these at the Vanguards and the Fidelity of the world and the Charles Schwab. The second, of course, is let me back up and say this. Banks are having a tough time. The big banks are having a tough time because they are paying hardly nothing still on their savings accounts, and customers are finally getting to the point where they're going, you know what, we're going to move our money to a bank or to a brokerage company that is paying these higher rates of return. We're done with getting the 0.5%, the 1%. And so what banks are doing now through CDs, and CDs my next category, they're doing a little bit of trickery to get you to stay in. And the reality is that for most people, they don't like to go to move accounts from banks to another bank or money from one institution to another institution. Statistics would show they don't really like to, so they put up with the small return. But this is based on what I saw on the internet. So my disclaimer: the best 1-year CD, and a CD is where you put money into the CD for a term, for a period of time, and then you take it out. During the time period, you get paid a certain yield on that money. And like I said, the a 1-year CD, and I saw this at one bank, was 5.2% for the year. So they're fighting back, trying to make sure that the customers can see, hey, we've got money, we will pay you more to stay here. But as I've said about these CDs, there's two issues with them. First of all, once that CD is up, what's going to be left longer term from the standpoint of a good investment yield on that CD. The second is they are advertising 15-month CDs 5.5%, 18 months CDs 5.5%, and it's a little bit of a smoke and mirrors advertising because they market it to look like that you're going to get 5.5% per year when you only get 5.5 or 5.5% on the 18 months. They're showing you what an annualized return would be if you were to keep the money invested for 2 years, but you're not able to do that, only the 18 months. So be careful that you do know what the difference is. But really, a CD, once again, you put money in for a certain term, for a term period. You take the money out at the end of the term. Pretty easy stuff. Fixed annuities. Fixed annuities are definitely something you want to look into, but I would say for longer term use, even though they do have 1-year fixed annuities today. But those 1 years, I don't think that is such a great deal or a great use of money. You'd have to get up a lot higher in rates to make more sense, especially when you have short-term CDs paying what they are. But fixed annuities definitely have a place on a short-term. When I say short-term, I mean maybe 3 to 5 years, and more of a longer term, 7 to 10 years. And they work just like CDs. Money's put into them. They grow at the end of the term. If you try to take the money out during the term, just like with CDs, you get a penalty. And they last for, like I said, a certain time period, and they pay much higher interest rates. For instance, and this is just based on what's out there right now, you can get up to a 5.45%, which is higher than any bank, for up to 7 years, and which is actually a very good deal from the standpoint of that's roughly same thing. It's roughly about the same as a bond yield. And plus, most people at retirement are taking 5%, 4 to 5% off of their investments as cash flow, and this is guaranteed locked in. So the fixed annuities are also a good option. So let's talk a little bit about which makes the most sense. We'll start with interest rates. The fixed annuities on that 3 to 7 year platform, from what I've seen and based on today's current numbers, which is May 22nd, are paying much higher than CDs. And that's just the way that they are right now. They've been really for years. When you could get a CD for 0.5% at a bank, you could get one for 3 to 3.5% from an insurance company. Now, one thing that, of course, we've talked about this, fixed annuities have a very sketchy reputation because of problems that investors have had with annuities. I will assure you that that is not annuities that are this basic, which is the fixed annuity. There's a lot of other annuities that you had to be careful about, still have to be careful about, but the fixed annuities are as basic as vanilla as that you can get. So interest rates wise, the fixed annuity is going to be better than the CD, at least for right now. The high yield savings account, the benefit that you have there is you have not as high of an interest rate, but you have the liquidity available to you and you're not locked in on a term. The penalties for getting out of an annuity are a lot stiffer than those of a CD, but you're keeping it in a longer time period. So you got to remember that. If you're putting the money in there to invest for a 3 to 10 year period, then you're keeping it there and you're not planning on taking a hit or anything by moving the money out of an annuity. Tax advantages. Now, this is something that a non-IRA after-tax fixed annuity. So you're not putting retirement IRA money into it. You're putting after-tax money into it. The fixed annuity, you don't have to pay taxes on the money until you take it out. So it grows tax-free until you take the money out. A CD, you pay taxes on the money as the money is earned. So there's a tax advantage for fixed annuities. And then an annuity also has what's called a pre-59.5 penalty. If you take that money out before 59.5, you get an additional penalty. So I think just to bring it up globally, talking about which one is better, where does the advantages lie, you definitely need to read all the fine print of anything that you go into, because there's bank fine print, there's insurance company fine print. You want to make sure that you are comfortable with what you're getting into. I would say with the fixed annuities, they're going to be more long-term and suited for someone who's 3 to say 10 years and that wants to get a really decent fixed guaranteed return on their money. So the only downside is the penalty for taking money out early. Most annuities have either interest only that you can take out or a 10% free withdrawal that you can take out. But with the 59.5 penalties, then the surrender charges, you want to make sure that you're comfortable with that. And most of the time that's not any big deal because you're looking at it long term as it is. But you want to make sure that you know better, that you know what it is. On a short-term basis, CDs can definitely be an option if they are paying that little bit of extra that's worth tying some money up for maybe 1 year or 2 years. But just once again, read the fine print. Make sure that you're not going to need that money during that time period. That's a really important one as well. And you can always go back to the high yield savings account. The high yield savings account, the ones that are paying the higher rates, are very strong. and they are liquid. Remember, you can get money in and out of it just like a savings account. Or what is a savings account? And you're getting a good, strong rate of return for that. But you got to shop around, and like I said, I don't know. I would rather go with somebody that's a reputable brokerage company or a bank that happens to have a money market that's paying a lot higher, versus something off of Bankrate.com of a internet bank that you've never heard of. But that's just me. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Make sure that you go to the brand new PrudentMoney.com. Go check out the site. We'd love to hear your feedback on it. And there's a ton of information on the site. We do post. In fact, I'm going to be posting something about what I talked about today at the website in the blog section, so you can go and get more specific information about what I've talked about. And then there is the podcasting section. Make sure that you go check that out. If you ever miss a program or you'd rather listen to it on your own time, I know a lot of people do, you can go to on your podcast platform of choice and listen to it at your leisure. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. You got a question for me? Please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.